Welcome. This is James Corbett of the Corbett Report with your eye-opener report for BoilingFrogsPost.com. It has to be regarded as one of the biggest ironies of our time that the two largest political movements of the past decade, although seemingly occupying opposite sides of the meaningless left-right political divide, actually started out from substantially the same point, with their anger directed at substantially the same target. I speak, of course, of the Tea Party and Occupy Wall Street, movements that we have been conditioned to believe represent ideals in mortal opposition, coming as they do from the supposed far left and far right of the so-called political spectrum. Sadly, as with so many other political movements, these movements did eventually morph into the caricatures that the corporate media created for them. The Tea Party became Tea Party Inc., funded by the Koch brothers and commandeered by Dick Armey and Glenn Beck and the Republican Party machinery. Occupy Wall Street, meanwhile, quickly lost momentum and, ultimately, all cultural relevance, as it too was co-opted by Soros and the Democratic Party machinery into an adjunct of the Obama re-election campaign. But neither the latter-day form of the Tea Party nor its Occupy counterpart shed any light on the shared source of outrage that motivated both groups in their original grassroots form, the banksters of Wall Street. That Occupy Wall Street was originally directed against the financiers of Wall Street does not require much explanation. From the protesters' choice of Zuccotti Park in the heart of the Manhattan financial district to the very name of the movement itself, the thousands of occupiers who descended on Wall Street in September 2011 were clearly motivated by outrage at the string of abuses, arrogance, and outright fraud in the financial realm that had brought the economy to its knees just 3 years earlier. That the Tea Party originated from that same anger is not nearly so well known. In fact, the first Tea Party protest was organized by a Boston 9/11 Truth group in 2006 and involved throwing copies of the 9/11 Commission report into Boston Harbor. The protest was then taken up by the End the Fed movement that had arisen in the wake of the Lehman Brothers collapse and subsequent bailout of Wall Street. This Tea Party, motivated by outrage at the financiers who had so recklessly gambled with the world's economy, and the governments, both Republican and Democrat, that had then backed them up at taxpayer expense, sought to abolish the United States privately owned central bank, whose board members are in fact the heads of the Big Six Wall Street megabanks. As we now know, these movements were quickly spun off into the cartoonish version of reality that seems specially reserved for American political debate. Instead of reflecting on the fact that vast swaths of both the left and right were in fact organizing around opposition to a common enemy, the financial vultures and their cronies in the bought and paid for government, the corporate media succeeded in driving the wedge between these two groups until it was merely teabaggers versus occutards. As disappointing as this is, perhaps there is a lesson to be learned from this experience. Namely that the politicians, the media, the financiers, and the other supporters of the status quo are not particularly threatened by mass political movements, marches on Washington, or demands for government to do something about the situation. But what they do live in mortal fear of is that people will start taking these matters into their own hands and doing the only thing that it is within our direct and immediate power to do, to withdraw our money from the financial web that they have spun around us. You've been watching an excerpt of this week's Eye Opener report. To continue watching the report, please log into BoilingFrogsPost.com.